And it's time now for Fox 2's Money Man, Murray Feldman. What you got for us today, Murray?
Hey, good morning, Alan. It is a Money Monday, and we're talking about financial planning with Brian O'Connor from the Detroit News. And we've got the Detroit News here. We're going to look through the pages of it with him and what he has to say to everybody today. First of all, let's talk about this time of year. Tax refunds coming. A lot of people like to get a refund, and they're running a little higher this year than normal, aren't they?
They're up. They're up about $460 on average. Part of that is because of the making work pay tax credit. So it's a little over $3,000. Last year it was a little over $2,500.
All right, and just 1 week ago today in the paper, you were advising people to think and ask themselves some questions before they take that money and spend that money.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of us, for a lot of people out there, this might be one of the few times out of the year that you're going to get a big chunk of cash like that, $2,000 or $3,000. And considering the way that the economy is still staggering along, you're going to need to think about it. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is, are you in trouble? I mean, do you have a bill that you can settle? Do you have something that's past due that you can take this wad of cash, call a creditor, call a credit card company and say, look, I got $2,200 back on my taxes right now, and I know I owe you $4,000. Can we make a deal? If you can't handle it, you can go to a credit counseling service, and they'll be glad to negotiate on your behalf and tell you what the best use of that money is.
Okay, so you can propose a settlement offer and maybe even resolve your debt for less than you owe. Any strings attached with that? Does that look bad on our credit rating or credit score?
It may ding your credit. In fact, it will ding your credit, but then again, not being current on your loans is also probably the worst thing you can do for your credit. You also may get a little bill next year for the amount of debt that you have forgiven. Basically, the government looks at that and says, well, you know, you went and got a Prada purse or a pair of fancy shoes and you didn't pay for it, so they're going to count that as income.
All these are things to think about before we take any money that's coming back to us and spend the money. And the other thing to think about really is, hey, what about my job? I have a job now, maybe I've had to take a pay cut, but how secure is it? Everything can still change, can't it?
Right, everything can change, and that's why if you don't need to use the money to maybe go consult a bankruptcy attorney or to settle a debt, then the next thing you want to do is look at your emergency fund. You got to remember, we have people who have gone 99 weeks of unemployment benefits, so that they are really spending almost up to 2 years. Just having a couple thousand in the bank isn't going to cover you.
Now, we were always told 3 months of expenses is what you need in cash in case there's a problem. But that was the old school of thought.
That was.
Now we have something, everybody's saying, well, look, you got to shoot for 8 months of expenses. And then some advisors are saying, wait, you've got to just have a good $20,000. How can people accumulate money like that?
Well, one of the things they can do is they can take a windfall like this and put that aside, and put aside any small regular amount that you can save. But when you get something like this, you know, at least think of what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Transmission dropped out of your car, tree fell on your roof. That's the kind of thing that if your job is shaking everything else, you're really not going to have that kind of cash to put on a credit card. And a lot of us, we used to look to home equity lines of credit to cover those kinds of expenses because it was deductible and low interest, and very few of us can tap that money anymore.
All right, and when we're talking about that kind of stuff on how do you accumulate money in the pages of the Detroit News today, Brian talks about coffee, and you notice we do have our coffee cup here, but guess what? We haven't put any coffee in it today. This could be a $42,000 coffee. Wow, that's a lot of money for a cup of coffee.
It is a lot of money for a cup of coffee. It's what a lot of financial planners call the latte factor. If you took $3 a day for a fancy coffee at a shop I won't name, and invested that at 6% for 20 years, you know, do a little time value money calculation, that'll be worth $42,000. Which is not to say that people shouldn't drink coffee, although my doctor says I shouldn't, but just that people should think about, if you really don't think you have any money to save, you know, come on, it's 20 cents if you make it at home, it's $3 in the store, get yourself a thermos, and make sure you're providing for your retirement, your college. Eventually, that's a good chunk of an emergency fund. There's all kinds of things that you can do with small savings.
And when we're talking about small savings, the small things certainly do add up. And if you take a look at what you're doing in your daily lives, carry a piece of paper and a pencil around and write down what you're spending on, you would really be surprised.
It is. It's mostly, and that thing about thinking about coffee, thinking about bottled water, thinking about when you buy lunch instead of getting it, it isn't that you have to live like a monk. It's just that you have to start thinking about, how am I spending my money, And at that kind of awareness, and you start to say, you know, that's $25 a week.
Brian O'Connor from the Detroit News. You could read them today, a couple of columns in there. Also, what to do if you can't pay your taxes in there. And we'll talk about that in the weeks to come right here on Money Monday. I'll see you tonight on Fox 2 News beginning at 5. Thank you, Brian, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Murray.
Tonight at 5, Money Works, and of course, the Job Shop is always working for you. Lee.
To have a cup of coffee. Greeting time. The music box is beating time.